Welcome to Arte's Pan-European interview in collaboration with 6 media partners. Today we are at the NATO headquarters to meet with the Secretary General of the North Atlantic Alliance. Goeiedag, Mark Rutte. Thank you very much for welcoming us here at the NATO headquarters in Brussels.
Welcome.
I'm here today with 2 colleagues, Philippe Renier from the Belgian newspaper Le Soir.
Good morning.
And Zoltán Molnár from the Hungarian news platform Telex. And so during the interview there will be also questions from other media partners.
Very good.
But my first question to you, Mr. Rutte, do you think it's possible that there is a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine before the end of the year?
It's difficult to predict because to get there you need also the Russians and it's always a bit unpredictable. What I do know is that the Americans and the Europeans and the Ukrainians are working day and night to get it done, making progress. A lot of work being done now on the security guarantees, as you know, to make sure that post a potential peace deal or a long-term ceasefire, Ukraine will stay strong. And the Russians will never try again to attack Ukraine. So that's all being worked on now. But let me not predict. I think it's very difficult to say.
But the Russians are refusing any troop deployment in Ukraine as a security guarantee.
Well, I stopped a long time ago to try to understand what the Russians are saying and not saying, etc. I think it's good that we are now really concentrating on getting a strong package on paper. And of course, there will be compromises have to be made here. You cannot end a war without a compromise. But on the important issue of the security guarantees, the reconstruction of Ukraine, I really think big progress was made over the last 2 weeks.
Europe has tried to be part of the negotiations from the outset. But are Europeans actually taken seriously by Washington? And can they influence the negotiations in any meaningful way?
Yes, and the Europeans are taken seriously by the Americans. Of course, there was this big frustration for about over 70 years that we were not paying the same as the Americans were paying on our collective defense. But particularly since the summit in The Hague, Europe has really stepped up. Example of stepping up. The coalition of the willing is a European-led coalition by the French, the Brits and the Germans. And we have seen Europeans stepping up when it comes to the collective defense of the eastern flank with Eastern Sentry. So all of this gives credibility to the European voice in NATO, also when it comes to the Americans.
As Ukraine said it's willing to give up its aspiration to NATO, Europeans are discussing a European-led peacekeeping force. What would be this force? How would it work? And would it work outside NATO?
The Washington Treaty and also the summit in 2024 clearly stated there is this irreversible path of Ukraine into NATO. That has not changed, but fact of life is also that a couple of countries, Hungary and others and the US, have stated that they do not think there can be consensus on this now. They are withholding their support on that consensus, which they have every right to do. And that's why you need to look for alternatives. And the alternative is the security guarantees. And they will work, the ideas they work like this, that as a first layer of defense you have a strong Ukraine armed forces. The second layer will be this European-led coalition of the willing. What it exactly will be is also being hammered out now, so I cannot give you all the details of that, but we are really making progress there. I think even huge progress over the last 10 days. But all the details, of course, will emerge when they are ready.
But what would be the role of NATO if it's
Well, NATO clearly has a role at the moment when it comes to Ukraine through NSETU, which is the command in Wiesbaden. We are coordinating all the efforts of getting the weapons into Ukraine, the training for Ukraine, capturing all the lessons from the war in Ukraine through our joint NATO-Ukraine organization, JTAC in Poland. So what that will mean exactly for the command in Wiesbaden, for JTAC and all that after a peace deal, of course, has to be decided. But NATO countries are very much involved here.
You were present in the latest discussions with Ukraine, the Americans and the Europeans in Berlin. Do you have any more details about what could be the backstop offered by the US in order to make these security guarantees?
Yes, I have, but again, I feel not at liberty to go too much into in detail. But the thinking is this, that if not NATO, we have to make sure that Ukraine has the security guarantees in place, that Putin understands, I cannot try this again. It cannot be a repeat of Minsk II, and that's why we are doing this.
Still on NATO's accession for Ukraine. President Zelensky seems at the moment to put on hold Ukraine's aspiration to join the organization. But doesn't that feed Putin's narrative that he had to start his special military operation in order to push back an aggressive NATO, quote unquote?
No, I mean, that was a totally crazy statement, because NATO is a defensive alliance.
So now I would like that we listen to an extract from your speech in Berlin last week.
We need to be crystal clear about the threat. We are Russia's next target. And we are already in harm's way. I fear that too many are quietly complacent. Too many don't feel the urgency. And too many believe that time is on our side. It is not. The time for action is now.
So this is probably the question that interests the most of viewers, the people who are watching us today.
Yeah.
Should European citizens get ready for a war soon or even very soon?
Only if we do not decide to implement the decisions we made in The Hague. If all of us will commit to spend 5% on defense, including 3.5% for defense by 2035, one. Second, if we all decide to make sure that Ukraine cannot lose this war, that Russia cannot get access to the whole of Ukraine, because then that 5% is not nearly enough. If we do these two things, we do not have to worry too much, because then we are not only stronger today, but also stronger in the future.
But the tone of your speech last week was really alarmist.
Yeah, because I need European citizens and politicians to realize that we took these decisions out of a necessity. When we look at Russia, he is spending 40% of his state budget on defense. He is spending 10% of his national income on defense. The whole Russian economy is now on a defense footing. And we know that he has invested in some of the latest weapon technology. We know that the latest missiles he has developed will reach European soil in 5 to 10 minutes. It means that, and they come down with 5 times the speed of sound. You cannot take them out with our conventional air defense systems. So this whole thinking that, for example, Brussels or London or Valencia is not on the front line, is not on the eastern flank, is wrong. We are all on the eastern flank. The difference between Vilnius and Valencia is 5 minutes.
But still, some may say that it's too alarmist, that NATO, as you said, is already the superpower compared to Russia, and that this defense spending, the rise of these defense expenditures will only benefit the industry.
Well, so make sure that you spend it in such a way, like Belgium, by the way, is doing, and others, with your defense industrial base, that you spend it in such a way that you have a little bit of a defense dividend coming out of all these investments. Nothing is against that. But, I mean, if you are worried that your defense industry will grow because of this, then don't spend it, but then accept that you have to speak Russian maybe in 5 or 10 years. That's the simple reality, and I cannot make it even any nicer. Let's not be naive. I mean, this guy is there, and the whole system in Russia is there because they have this historical fallacy that they want to get control back over the whole of the Soviet Union.
Péter Szijjártó, the Hungarian Minister of Foreign Affairs, criticized your Berlin speech at the end of last week, calling on you to stop fueling war tensions. As NATO Secretary General, what do you think about the fact that NATO member Hungary regularly call you and other Western leaders warmongers? And do you have a satisfying working relationship with Mr. Orbán?
Yes, I have, and I don't care about his comments. I take note of them, of course, respectfully. But in the meantime, Hungary is spending what it needs to spend. You are really an important ally when it comes to the defense of NATO. And we might not always agree, but that is why we are democracies. We can disagree.
Let's talk about your relationship with Donald Trump. Since you became Secretary General of NATO, you maintained a quite friendly relationship with the President of the United States. Can you afford to maintain this friendly relationship with Donald Trump?
Yeah, but it is rooted in something. It is rooted in the fact, yes, I like him personally because I know him from when he was in office as Trump 45 and I was Prime Minister of the Netherlands. But it is rooted in facts. And the fact is that thanks to Donald Trump, we are now on a trajectory, hopefully, to a peace deal on Ukraine. He was the only one who was able to break that deadlock with Putin. Secondly, he has been extremely clear to the other allies in NATO, hey, the US is completely vested into NATO, we are completely committed to NATO, but we have this expectation. Start to spend more and equalize with the US. And I think the NATO summit in The Hague was one of his biggest foreign policy successes. And we would never have gotten there without Trump. And that's why I think we can be happy with him being president of the United States.
But what about the content of the national security strategy?
Yeah, so one, complete commitment to the European security. Two, a complete commitment to NATO. So NATO has a direct security implication for the US itself, namely making sure that the US stays safe. So that's all in the NSS.
But still in the NSS, there is also sort of, despite of the European Union, some support for far-right parties, populism and so on, which tries to divide us. And also the commitment, like the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, said here precisely at NATO in February, that the conventional defense of the old continent won't be offered by the US anymore.
Yeah, not solely. And he was right. Europe has to step up, and we are stepping up. But the US has also made clear, when it comes to the nuclear, but also to the conventional defense of NATO territory in Europe, we will be there. So we have, as we speak, 85,000 US soldiers all over European NATO territory. That is a huge investment of the United States in NATO. What Pete Hegseth was saying, over time, you guys need to take more of that defense upon yourself, and he's right. That's only logical.
Will that number remain the same, more or less?
Well, I don't know what exactly will happen with the numbers. What I know is that with all the investments we are making at the moment, that some of these capabilities, some of these enablers, we can do ourselves, which is only logical, because the US also has to look what is happening, pivot towards the situation in the Pacific. And by the way, this is all connected, all these theaters. So if China would invade Taiwan, we all know that the chances are huge that Xi Jinping will call his junior partner Putin and ask him to keep us busy here. And that is why this is all connected. This is why the US is long-term invested in Europe.
About the NSS, we have a question from our Italian partner, Internazionale. With the new NSS, can we say that NATO is finished and that your job is useless, Mr. Rutte?
Well, to the contrary, I would say the NSS clearly stating save Europe, complete commitment to NATO, complete commitment to the working together within the alliance, together with Canada. I think all this makes NATO even more relevant.
I have two interconnecting questions from our partners. The first is from IR from Latvia.
Right.
They asked that after a massive incursion of Russian drones into Poland's territory, NATO announced a new operation called Eastern Sentry. What have been the main results and challenges after 2 months? And the Spanish ELPA is asked, what capabilities does NATO have to counter the hybrid warfare that Russia is already waging against Europe?
We have seen extra capabilities and resources being supplied to the national eastern flank and to the collective defense of the eastern flank through NATO since Eastern Sentry was launched by many allies within NATO. And you have also seen the first deployments of drones and anti-drone technologies to make sure that we can defend ourselves better, learning from the war in Ukraine. On the hybrid warfare, many hybrid activities are now being deployed by the Russians. We see this all over NATO territory. I can assure you that NATO collectively, and I cannot always tell you exactly what we are doing, but that we are sure, you can be assured that we do everything to protect ourselves and to discourage our adversary from continuing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rutte, for your time. Thank you to our media partners, and see you next time for another Pan-European interview.